Hi, and welcome back to the second episode of Four Chicks versus Netflix. I'm Maria, and I'm joined by Rory, Ava, and Ellery. And last week we started off by talking about some of our favorite movies, so I thought today we could go around and say our favorite TV shows. So I can start. Mine is embarrassing, but Grey's Anatomy. I'm a fanatic about Grey's Anatomy. McDreamy, McSteamy, the whole thing.
My favorite fictional TV show is The Good Place, and my favorite reality TV show is Deadliest Catch.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Hi. My favorite TV show is the Netflix original BoJack Horseman. Very, very good show.
My favorite TV show currently is Sherlock, and my favorite reality TV show is Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that one. It's like a secret love of mine.
First show I saw in America.
Really?
Yeah.
The Bachelor is also really good, but
So on a totally different note from The Bachelor and the Kardashians, so today we're going to talk about everything Ted Bundy. So Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile was released from Netflix in January of this year. And it had generated a lot of buzz both before and long after its release. The drama, which was based on the true story of Ted Bundy, stars Zac Efron, who plays the killer. Unlike other movies about Bundy, Extremely Wicked focuses less on his crimes and more heavily on the mind of Bundy. So let's take a look.
Do you remember the night we met?
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have been witness to the unspeakable horrors of the defendant's heinous crimes. You have seen ghastly injuries, smashed-in faces, broken jaws.
Will the defendant please rise?
For years, I've carried this guilt that I'm to blame for everything. If only I hadn't trusted you.
Promise you'll never leave me, Liz.
It's about another missing girl, isn't it? Ted, did you do it?
No.
We've got a very disturbed, sick individual.
You'll be the first nationally televised trial in history.
You look nice, partner.
I'm disguised as an attorney today.
I get very scared, but, he's also really dreamy.
There are things you don't know that will shock you beyond your worst nightmares.
It's all a lie.
It is a capital murder case, and you are skating on thin ice.
This is about catching a monster.
I wish I could take it all back.
What about me? I love you.
Get out!
The killings were extremely wicked, shockingly evil, vile.
Did you do these things, Ted?
This is all gonna end.
It's only gonna end with the truth.
This movie has been talked about so much, so I just wanted to see, what was your take, your opinion on this film?
it was a lot. I was following the release date for a while because I was very excited about it. Like psychological thrillers like this, and especially in a documentary style or historical context, really interest me. So when I heard about it, I was like, okay, Zac Efron, get it, and then when I watched it, thought it was a very interesting take because it focuses on Ted Bundy's story from the perspective of his girlfriend, who, was in love with this killer, and it was extremely interesting to see because you really didn't get that sense that he was this bad guy, because his girlfriend really did see him as like a normal person. But I did like that throughout the film, you did see his subtle connections to the crimes instead of like directly like, yeah, so this is how this happened. You only see that towards the end with the hacksaw moment that they put in. But in the beginning, he seems like a normal person. Towards the middle, you kind of get that sense of like, I should be scared of this person. Then at the end, you're like, okay, I'm terrified. However, I think all of us can agree that I would have liked to see a more direct connection to the crimes that he actually committed instead of this. Ted Bundy was a normal person, because he wasn't.
I agree. I wish that, like, if when he was in the interrogation room, or when his girlfriend was like, is this you? Did you do it? There was a flashback to him. Because Zac Efron does this really cool yet creepy thing with his eyes, where he goes from this, like, kind, loving looking person, like totally normal, to you can see, like, the killer in his eyes.
Yes.
And I wish that when we switched from that, when his eyes made the switch, we saw a flashback, just to reinforce that he was evil, he was bad, which is unlike the opinions so many Americans had, especially, particularly women, at the time of his trial.
Yeah, I agree with what Ellery said about how they showed these little moments, like, leading up to and, like, after the murders, like, where he's driving the car twice and he gets the speeding ticket. And so that was interesting. And yeah, I also agree with what Maria said about how there should have also been a little bit more, like, direct imagery of, like, what he did. So while I did enjoy, like, the build-up, the psychological build-up to, like, the hacksaw, I do think, like, they could have added, like, a flashback, or maybe, like, changed, like, the approach to the trial, or something like that, because that was really where he was saying, like, oh, I'm normal, I'm innocent, I didn't do this.
Yeah.
I think that every time, especially when we saw, you know, that one of the scenes where he gets pulled over and gets this speeding ticket, they find that bag full of things. That would have been a great place to put a flashback.
Yeah.
But on all of your point with the women who were saying, oh my God, Ted Bundy's so attractive, that really reminds me of, this all hit home for all of us because we all live in Lexington or Bedford, Mass. You know, the Boston bombing, a very unfortunate event. I actually had some friends that were in that marathon, and I remember people coming forward and being like, oh yeah, those, like, bombers, they're really cute. Where people who are, like, directly affected to those things, especially, like, those people whose daughters, wives, friends were victims of Ted Bundy, they were probably just like, how do you think this murderer is attractive? And I think we've all expressed that we don't find Ted Bundy attractive. We don't really know what was going through those people's heads. But at the same time, we don't really find the Boston bombers attractive. Because I feel like it takes, you were saying at one point, like, those, like, Tumblr crushes on murderers kind of thing. But I felt very uncomfortable when they put those clips in. And I think that I think that's a very normal reaction. Like, I felt uncomfortable when people were like, oh my God, the bombers are so cute. Oh my God, Ted Bundy's so cute. Same thing. But it would have been better if we saw more of the wicked or shockingly evil side of Bundy in this movie. Because that's, honestly, a lot of people are getting good reviews for this movie, but that's the one thing everyone's saying. Mm-hmm. We see too much of Ted Bundy being a good person, because that's the act he put on. And I think it's really important to see that. I think that people are really taking it kind of, like, too far sometimes. They're just like, oh my God, this is a terrible movie. And it's like, no. Like, some people really did see Ted Bundy as an innocent man.
What did you guys think of the casting? Because before the movie was released on Netflix and it was announced that Zac Efron would be playing Ted Bundy, a lot of people had an issue with somebody who we think of so fondly as, like, High School Musical, like Zac Efron's attractive, and so people had an issue with him playing Ted Bundy. I want to see what your opinion is on the casting.
I think it was a choice that they made, possibly, like, I did not watch the movie or the show because I can't really handle that stuff. But I think it was a choice to kind of reflect how he was, in some people's eyes, normal. He was innocent, he was attractive, but it's definitely a pressing role for him. Like, it was, I think we'll remember Zac Efron for his ability to change between going from Troy Bolton and now he's a murderer.
I never watched High School Musical. I wasn't really a Disney kid. I watched a lot of Cartoon Network when I was younger.
Right.
But yeah, I know it was a big sensation for people my age. And I can see how people would be upset by that casting choice. But I think that Lily Collins did a good job balancing him out because I think she was, especially toward the end, she did a really compelling job of confronting him and saying, you have to tell me the truth, you must release me. And so that was a really great moment, I felt like, and I felt like it really culminated her character arc in a satisfying way.
I agree. They played very well with each other. You could see them being a couple in real life. Like, you could see that happening. Like, when they're at the bar or falling in love, you can see that happening when she's confronting him, saying, you have to release me. You can see that happening. So I think the casting was all around great. I was very intrigued how Zac Efron would do, but I think he did a really great job.
Yeah, I think we see a lot of actors, like it was like when Daniel Radcliffe went from Harry Potter to being naked on the stage in a horse play or something, and that's really how he kind of went into his own. Now he's doing really well in like different movies, and he's not just seen as Harry Potter, he's seen as like Swiss Army Man and Broadway star and like this, that, the other thing. And I think Zac Efron, like, people are upset about his casting, but he did a great job, especially with his facial emotion. And while we all agree that the movie arc could have been different, I really do agree with your point on his facial features and his eyes. Like, he had said in interviews that this role took a lot out of him, and it did disturb him, and it took an emotional toll. And a lot of people that play characters like this really do say that afterwards, and I'm glad that he took it so seriously. So overall, I think he did a great job, honestly. Casting is spot on.
Going back to the topic of, like, him being a normal person, for me personally, the scenes I found the most disturbing were the romantic scenes, especially like the kissing and like the near sex scene. I had to like skip over some of that just because it was like, so like gut-wrenching to see someone get so intimate with someone who she doesn't know is a bad person.
It was interesting to hear towards the end of the movie, though, that she was the one that reported him to the police, his girlfriend. And it was very interesting to see her fall out of love slowly with this man, because we see her going into, like, clinical depression, just not moving from her couch, like, chain-smoking cigarettes, and it's wild. But I agree with that. To some extent, I was like, wow, I'm just watching this person that murdered, like, 30 women, like, confirmed 30 women, like, just, like, almost having sex with this person. It's just wild to see that. It's wild to see him engage in, like, normal acts as this terrible, awful human being.
Yeah. And to go on your point about when, she was confronting him, and when she reported him, that I didn't know that piece of the story in real life, so that really, like, took me by surprise, that because I think she wanted to believe that he was innocent, and, like, obviously there came a point where she fell out of love and realized the truth, but, like, for her to report him, I was not expecting that.
Right. Interesting.
So, so we watched a fictional movie, which was based in truth about Ted Bundy, but the Ted Bundy tapes allowed us to see and hear the voice of the killer. So they were tapes that were recorded in the months prior to his execution by reporter Stephen Marchad, and he got to hear and record Ted Bundy finally confessing to some, experts believe not all, of the murders that he was linked to.
He didn't look like anybody's notion of somebody who would tear apart young girls.
My name is Ted Bundy. I've never spoken to anybody about this. I am looking for an opportunity to tell the story as best I can.
A person of this type chooses his victim for a reason. Possession, control, violence.
There was something unique about Ted's brain. He talked in terms of a voice in his head, and this voice would start saying things about women.
He had very blue eyes. When he really got going, his eyes went absolutely black.
Murder, leaving a person of this type hungry, unfulfilled, would also leave him with the obviously irrational belief that the next time he did it, he would be fulfilled. And the next time he did it, he would be fulfilled. Or the next time he did it, he would be fulfilled.
Theodore Bundy has escaped, suspected of dozens of sex killings in Washington State, Idaho, Utah, and Colorado.
I think things are going to work out. That's about all I can say.
Bundy is acting as his own lawyer. What is unusual to see is that many of the onlookers are women. Are you a little scared when you look at him?
He just doesn't look like the type to kill somebody.
Serial killer Theodore Bundy has escaped once again.
One of the FBI's most wanted men.
He was charming, good-looking, smart. Are you sure you have the right guy?
I mean, I'm not an animal and I'm not crazy. I'm a split personality. I mean, I'm just a normal individual.
What did you guys think of that docu-series take on the fictional movie that we were just talking about?
I think it was very interesting to see the side of the reporter and what tactics that they really used to get Ted Bundy to admit to his crimes. Because we hear the interviewers getting frustrated that he won't talk about the murders. But then they were like, you can use the third person. So if you were to commit this act, what would you do? And then he takes off the sprint and gives full details, pretty much admitting what he did. But really what struck me was when he switched from third person to first person. And just started talking about, yeah, I did this, and this is how I did it, and blah, blah, blah. Because he truly thought that if he was going to admit to his crimes, he would get released from death row, or at least get more time, which was odd to me, because it's like, why would you want more time on death row? Because you're not going to get moved off death row,
No.
Unless you're innocent, but he wasn't innocent, like very clearly not innocent. So that was really what I took away from it.
Yeah. I mean, there's only 4 episodes in the entire series, but they're so powerful to hear Ted Bundy admit to the things he did. And I agree with you, it was wild when he was talking in the third person and then switched to the first.
You know what I thought was crazy was just a link between the movie and the docuseries. The only picture in the movie that they show of a body is of that person that he cut off the head off with a hacksaw. The only photo of a body they show, or one of the only photos of a body they show in the docuseries, was the hacksaw body.
Yeah.
So I was like, parallels.
I was watching it on Netflix, and so I finished the Extremely Wicked, and then it just immediately rolled into the tapes. And so it was great seeing like the parallels of, because the tapes are not just Ted Bundy speaking, it's interviews with the reporter and friends and families of the victims, including one victim who he had kidnapped but survived. And so it was interesting to hear them tell the story that I think was a little bit left behind in the movie just because we never saw the only image of a body we saw, like you said, was the hacksaw. So them kind of filling in those gaps from the movie.
Right.
I think both of those perspectives are really important. Like the woman in his life in the movie, and then people who were victims or potential victims and friends and family in the tapes. And something that the tapes showed that the movie didn't show was like his childhood and like how other people kind of like viewed him when he was younger. And he was saying like, oh, I had such a great childhood, I had so many friends, I was a varsity sportsman. And then you had like a teacher or something saying like he had no friends, he wasn't a varsity sportsman, blah blah blah. And it just shows stark, clear, concisely that he's just a liar and he just, lies all the time.
That really surprised. I don't know why I initially believed him. I think because he was so confident in the story he told when he said, I was a varsity athlete, I had a great childhood, I had a great relationship with my parents. You don't think that that's something he would lie about, and then hearing the other side of that, you're just like, he lies so easily, so confidently. Like, what does he tell the truth about? Other than the confessions. But like, when has he ever told the truth in his life? It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Is there anything you guys didn't like about the tapes?
I honestly think that it's hard to say something that you don't like about something that uses real audio. It's, if you're gonna say that you don't like something about something that shows a reporter and the person of interest talking, it's really gonna be up to your own morality. Like, if someone doesn't like serial killers, as no one should, you can be like, I didn't like that Ted Bundy was a serial killer, but in this specific case where you're really hearing his voice, it's hard to say that you don't like something. It's only easy, really, to say what you're interested in, because you can't really be like, I wish they changed that, because you can't change anything. You could change how it was presented, but I think it was presented very well. And it really used the people that did interview him and were actually there. So I think it's a little bit hard, especially in these kinds of situations, which we are seeing more now, of real tapes of killers getting put out there, because it's like, you can disagree with the actions, but you can't really disagree with, or you can disagree with how it was put out. But I think they did so well on this, and it was received well by the public that did watch it. So that's kind of an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, with a documentary, you can, like, criticize how it's edited.
Right.
So, I mean, I've seen some documentaries that they're just kind of slow, and, they use B-roll, like, over and over again. But this documentary had a lot of different B-roll, and I thought it was paced really well. And, they drew in a variety of perspectives. And I just thought it was really well put together.
I agree with that. The release of the tapes was long anticipated before they came out. Do you think it would be as popular or something that generated as much buzz if it wasn't so close to the fictional movie where people couldn't watch them in a pair? Do you think that one helped the other one's success?
I think in some ways it did, but as of right now, there are actually a lot of these crime documentaries coming out. Like, just yesterday, there was a documentary released on Michelle Carter, who aided her boyfriend's suicide and was sentenced with the crime of involuntary manslaughter. And I'm excited to watch that tonight. But I think that, honestly, like, in this very specific case, the Ted Bundy thing happened not too long ago, but long enough ago that we weren't alive. Or alive for most of it. So basically, I think that having a name like Zac Efron attached to these different things aided publicity. I think if you're interested in serial killers or crime dramas, you're going to watch it anyway, because it is one of the most notorious serial killers we're talking about today. However, having both a dramatized version and then a documentary version helped because it's kind of like a package deal. You don't really want to watch one without the other.
Yeah, I for sure agree with them being a package deal and that being like more appealing to also a wider demographic of viewers. American true crime is a big theme in television today and movies. Do you think that in any way glorifies what they do? Or do you think that it brings, like, how do you think that bringing their actions to light affects people? You know, bringing it to, like, glory.
One of the things that Ted Bundy said in the Ted Bundy tapes was that he wanted to be remembered and that his name is going to be said forever. So one thing that can open a dialogue is that however many years later, I'm pretty sure it's close to 30, around there, like 30 years later, we're having an actor, a famous, attractive actor, Zac Efron, play him in this movie. There's a question of whether or not we should give these serial killers these platforms, because one of the things that, if you go into crime psychology, one of the things that you really talk about is these people are doing it for attention after the fact. And it was very clearly stated by Ted Bundy himself that he wanted to be remembered. He knows that his story is going to be told. He wanted to be famous. And now he is. Mm-hmm. And now there's Zac Efron attached to him. And now there's these tapes, and now there's this movie. So there is that question of, is it going to give people with the same troubled mind the idea that if they do commit these crimes, are they going to get the same press? Are they going to get this platform of, yeah, I was a serial killer, my goal was to become famous, and here I am, famous. Maybe infamous, but still famous nonetheless.
Well, any attention is still attention.
Exactly. Bad press is still press. Mm-hmm. So, I agree. But yes, I do think that it is a question and it does need to be talked about, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like right now we're living less in the age of serial killers and more in the age of mass shooters. And, you know, they do some very similar heinous things. And, you know, just recently we had the New Zealand shooter who, you know, did a live stream before he went in the building, you know, saying, subscribe to PewDiePie. And, you know, just showing that, you know, that clout you can get from, you know, doing a live stream and, like, getting your name out there and even attaching your name to, like, the most famous YouTuber on the platform. You know, it shows how much power these people have now that we're, you know, living with the internet. And so I think it's definitely a discussion worth having. Should we bring these voices back? And if we do, how do we present these voices?
And I don't think the answer is black or white. You know, I don't think it's a yes or no question. And I also think a lot of it has to do with how it's presented. We talked about, like with the movie, us wishing that there was more to reinforce the evil, you know.
Right.
So I think it's very presentation heavy as well. Should we rate?
Yes.
Okay.
We need to do the movie first, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
So, the movie, extremely wicked,
shockingly
evil and vile. Right, ready?
I did the same thing.
Okay, how do we count thumbs now?
Okay, so
2, 3,
we should probably explain.
5. And then, are you half one down?
Yeah.
Okay, 5.5 thumbs out of 8.
Okay.
So the reason why I put up half a thumb and 1 thumbs up, mine's closer to like almost 2 thumbs up. I just didn't like that. I thought it needed more of a linkage to the crimes, but that's my only gripe with it. I think it was very beautifully done. However, I would have liked to see more of Ted Bundy's a bad guy, just to like reinforce this more, you know?
I had my thumb down because I can't handle that stuff. Like it's like disturbing to me. But I wanted to do side thumb because like I didn't really watch it, so I can't be. There was probably some aspects that I would have appreciated, like even if it's the lighting,
yeah,
or the cinematography. I'd be like, oh my god, the scenery is awesome.
Right.
I gave 2 thumbs. I did have the same gripe as Ellery, but I think that it nevertheless sparked a conversation about serial killers and and Ted Bundy and television, like the television landscape. So I give 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I had 1.5. Same reason as Ellery, pretty much. That's really all I have to say about that.
All right.
Now we should do the
tapes.
Tapes.
The tapes, yes. You ready?
Ready.
All right, we've got 6.5 thumbs out of 8.
Yes.
All right.
I think that. Yeah, I pretty much think we've said it all, honestly. Like, beautifully done documentary. You can't really argue with the facts.
All right, so I think that's all we have for this episode of 4 Chicks vs. Netflix. Join us next time for Ava's picks.
Sherlock is the TV show, and John Mulaney's comedy special, Kid Gorgeous.
Great.
All right.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.